With the announcement of the upcoming Monster Hunter title right at the very end of this year's Game Awards, the community completely exploded in celebration and anticipation of what this new entry can offer. The trailer itself, though short, revealed a surprising amount of features both big and small, and out of all of them, the most discussed was Wild's being open world. Now, obviously pretty much nothing has been 100% confirmed. At this time, this is for all intents and purposes mere speculations, but the concept of an open world Monster Hunter game is not new either. Ever since its inception that the franchise tried to implement that feature on numerous occasions. They tried in Monster Hunter 1, they tried in Monster Hunter 4, they tried in Monster Hunter World, but they never truly succeeded, with the closest thing we got being large maps with 0 loading screens in the 5th generation. But it is clear that since the very beginning, Capcom wanted the series to be a lot more vast and expansive than what it currently is. Also, just a tiny side note, am I the only one who thinks this tech demo iteration of the Ancient Forest is so much better than what we got design-wise? Just look at this. Anyway, on this latest teaser it is evident that the game has a much larger emphasis on scale. From more numerous wildlife to a broader landscape, plus what we know from Capcom's previous attempts, there's a strong suspicion that this will be the first time a Monster Hunter game truly succeeds in implementing an open world. But I'm not here to argue the reasons behind such assumptions. That has already been made many times over the past week by numerous people, myself included. That's not what this is going to be about. I am here to go beyond that. I am here to ask why. Does Monster Hunter truly need an open world? Does it benefit from it? And if so, in what way exactly? The concept of an open world can be somewhat vague depending on the game and genre, but when it comes to a looter like Monster Hunter, the consensus of its definition seems pretty universal. When members of this community mention such feature, they refer to a singular map which contains the vast majority, if not all, of the game's content without any stopping points or physical restrictions between them. In practicality, this implies that all biomes, all villages and all the monsters are actively present on a single landmass which players can traverse and interact freely with no loading screens or invisible barriers. That the hunter can leave the hub into the wild, cross several biomes which would represent multiple maps, complete their quest and go all the way back to the village, all of this completely seamless. I myself am a huge fan of this idea. If done right, a world like this would make the 6th generation the most immersive that this series ever had, and From Software proved that massive maps can be done well with Elden Ring. But while the concept sounds amazing on paper, we can get ahead of ourselves and we must question how could Capcom implement this feature and if it even works to begin with. Because in RPGs it has been proven for decades that it does, and it does so extremely well if done properly. But a looter, a rather unique looter like Monster Hunter, may not benefit as much as we might think. Initially, we should be asking how can that improve the overall experience this series is known to provide in the first place. So let's start from there. The franchise's core gameplay loop can be summarized into 4 separate phases: preparation, search, objective, and maintenance. The loop begins with the player setting themselves ready for the hunt ahead of them. They organize their inventory to hold enough space for all the possible resources they may bring, while also containing the necessary tools and equipment they might require during the quest. They eat their meal to obtain the desired buffs and adjust their gear to better suit the upcoming hunt. Next, they are launched into the wild and proceed to search, track and find their target, being either a resource, an item or a monster. Once contact is established, that's when the completion of the quest's main goal takes place, being this the loop's phase where most of the short-term gratification occurs, since this is when we fight the monsters. Upon succeeding their task, hunters return to the hub, initiating the maintenance component of the loop where they stock the resources gathered, craft or refine new gear, and perform other miscellaneous activities depending on the game, like managing farms or attending to special events, until they pick a brand new quest to restart this process all over again. This loop remained pretty much untouched since the very first entry back in 2004, and for a very good reason. The loop itself is extremely effective at what the devs intended the players to experience: the immersive feeling of being a hunter. Preparation influences you to be an organized and conscious player, so you are always prepared for a quest at any time. You enter the ring clueless of your opponent's location, forcing you to search for it, giving you tools to aid you doing exactly that more efficiently, like a true hunter. They provide you with the freedom of expressing yourself through the game's combat by offering a vast array of weapons, armors, skills and tools so you can do your job your way and in a gratifying manner. And if successful, you are rewarded for completing your duty, allowing you to climb the ranks and acquire better equipment so you can hunt stronger and more dangerous monsters. All of this matching the universe's lore with perfect accuracy. Capcom wanted us to feel like a true hunter for hire, an independent mercenary, and this loop not only is incredibly lore accurate, it also makes us feel exactly how the devs intended. Or does it? Everybody knows at this point that there's a very tangible discrepancy between the new and old gen titles. We are all aware that World brought some massive changes to the series, and even more so in Rise. And perhaps not all of those changes actually benefited the overall Monster Hunter experience. Let's think about the search phase for a second. If we analyze all the mainline and portable games Monster Hunter had until now, we can see a clear pattern where the search component slowly but steadily lost focus and became less and less predominant gameplay-wise, to the point that in Rise it's literally non-existent. You can see the monsters at any time, all you need to do is go to them. This was a response from World where people were not very pleased with the scout flies, since at a certain point of the game they would showcase the monsters immediately, just like in Rise, gradually removing the search component of the course of the player's playthrough. Now, people also didn't like the fact that they would have to always follow the scout flies and looking for tracks or markings in order to find the monster. To many, it became so repetitive that it felt like a waste of time, and Capcom appears to agree with that since they outright removed it in Rise, just like I mentioned. But I don't believe that the developers wanted this aspect of the hunt to go away permanently. Because, think about it, if we are not tracking or looking for the animal anymore, we are not hunting the monster, we are simply fighting it. And I know for a fact that people do want to have that feeling. They want to track the monster down. They want to experience the cat and mouse gameplay before they finally encounter their target. The true issue with the scout flies was that they would find the monster too quickly, and that the mechanic itself is not complex enough to allow players to express themselves in a skillful manner. You can't get better at tracking monsters. You can solely upgrade the scout flies over time, making them more efficient. But that efficiency doesn't come from the player, and that lack of interactability is what actually makes the mechanic boring. Something that an open world could possibly help. Even though World's maps are pretty big, I don't personally think they are vast enough to allow a tracking system to be more in-depth, because creating a more elaborate mechanic like this to be utilized in such a small space would make basically no difference during a hunt, and therefore it would be a waste of time, money and resources for the dev team. But if we enlarge the map, if we make them larger than any Monster Hunter map ever was, then Capcom has the breathing room to finally construct a complex tracking system that rewards players for increasing its efficiency through skill. A system that would force the player to think, to read the area surrounding them, looking for clues, read patterns, study the monster to learn their routines, their rituals. With an open world sufficiently sized, that element of the game's loop could potentially be just as dynamic and methodical like the combat itself, and instead of being a short, tedious and brainless feature that everybody wants to skip to get the actual good part, it could become a long, thought-demanding and skill-expressive portion of the overall hunt. And some parts of the trailer indicate that that's exactly what Capcom is trying to do. Like many content creators pointed out already, the Hunter's mount has a bunch of equipment on it that may very well not be just cosmetic. A camp tent, numerous bags, and even a large pouch with a second weapon inside. This heavily suggests that the Hunter's trip is long, so long in fact that not only it requires additional resources to make a temporary camp, but it even has an extra weapon as a reserve. If we add all of this, plus the fact that we know Wilds is putting a large emphasis on the scale of the world as well as its ecosystems, we have strong evidence that hunts will be significantly longer than previous titles. And that may allow a tracking system to finally have enough depth to not only make the mechanic engaging in isolation, but to also improve the game overall by offering a slower, methodical and immersive hunting experience before the combat even begins. The wildlife present on the trailer is also a good indication of such. The number of specimens is a lot higher than we ever saw before, and even more so, the level of behavioral complexity of the animals themselves is also much more varied and detailed. We saw herds roaming together, the males alerting the herd whenever they are in danger, large monsters chasing the player, large monsters actually hunting in packs now. We kinda had this in World, but never to this degree. And if Capcom put so much effort into the ecosystem's volume and the animal's AI, there's no better reason to do it than to add that into an improved tracking system. Here's an example. Imagine this. At the hall of your village, you find a quest in which you must hunt a Diablos far away in the desert that has been terrorizing the merchant traffic in that region over the past few weeks. You accept the challenge, and at dawn, you depart. You travel through jungles, plains, and mountains. You see many forms of wildlife, including large monsters of all kinds, some of which you would love to make gear out of. But your journey is long, and you know you wouldn't have enough resources to finish your main objective in case you deviate now. So you continue your travels, and at dusk, you finally arrive at your destination. A maze-like set of tall, rocky formations make the routes of the aforementioned merchants. The quest tells you that this is where the Diablos is, but the area is vast and convoluted. You would take ages to find it blindly, even more so at night. So you set up a camp at the edge of the maze and let your mount rest while planning your next move. As one of your items of choice, you brought an ecology book from the Royal Paleontology Scriveners, an encyclopedia made by a sector of the guild filled with information of the world's ecosystems, its flora and fauna. You read about Diablos, looking for additional info that can aid you track it down more easily. You read that a rare kind of giant cacti grows in that location only during breeding season, a treat that many Diabloses look for. Something that could also explain why there's a Diablos in the area to begin with, so that's a good start. Although these can also become a problem. Female Diablos change their pigmentation to black to signify that they are in heat. If the specimen lurking around these parts is confirmed to not be a male, at this time of the year we won't be facing a normal variant anymore, and unluckily for you that would mean that your opponent may be immune to your dragon damage greatsword, cutting your DPS in half. Fortunately, you can prepare with a raw damage hammer as a reserve in case your main weapon loses efficiency. The sun rises once again, and you begin your hunt by releasing your caged scoutflies, and you direct them to look exclusively for traces of vegetation in the vicinity. A few seconds later, they detect petals that can only be found in the giant cacti you are looking for, pointing to one of the roads on your right, and as ordered, they continue their search and you follow them. After a few minutes of tracking down the petals, you finally discover a small cluster of giant cacti in a wider section of the maze. Although this one is already partially eaten, still dripping their juicy insides into the scorched sand below. An odd observation, since Diabloses never stop eating midway through, especially a delicacy such as this. And the bite marks perfectly match, so it was indeed a Diablos that ate here recently. You try to figure out a possible reason behind this strange behavior, and then you remember something. You waste no time and you order your scoutflies to look for any sort of cave entrance, and shortly after they uncover a small tunnel on one of the walls. You lay down and drag yourself into it, and your mount slowly follows you. The further you move, the larger the tunnel becomes. You crawl through it for half a minute until you reach a large cave. It's dark and silent. Only a few beams of light pierce through the ceiling, and only the echoey impact of droplets hitting the rock can be heard. In a corner, surrounded by vegetation, you see a strange tiny hill, and once near it, your suspicions become a reality. A nest, and in it, you don't see eggs, but rather 3 tiny Diablos sleeping with their egg shells still covering the soil around them. However, your focus quickly shifts as you feel the tremors of heavy footsteps rapidly approaching, and before you have the time to flee or hide, there you are, face to face with your target. Your assumptions were correct. In front of you is a large black Diablos with its mouth filled with cacti. These black subspecies are known for being extremely violent, and with its offspring in danger, you know for certain that this will be a much harder fight than it should be. But nevertheless, you have a task to complete, and with no time to escape, you draw your raw hammer and the hunt begins. Even though this was a short example, just imagine how much more interesting and mentally stimulating hunts could be if done in this format. Instead of being a guide, but rather a tool to uncover clues, this new iteration of scoutflies could make this once boring aspect of the game a lot more engaging and help players fully immerse themselves into the life of a hunter. And an open world environment would be crucial for this system's success. Of course, there are other minor benefits this could bring into the series, but in my honest opinion, this one especially would by far be the most affected element of the game, potentially fixing an important aspect of the game's core loop and enhancing its immersive component to a degree that we never saw, but always hoped for. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you wanna join the ranks, you can do so for only $1 a month, the link will be in the description. Make sure to subscribe for more Monster Hunter content, don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server, engage with the community, and I hope to see you all next week.